So the second method for dividing polynomials is what we call synthetic division. And basically it's an alternative to the long division, and most people like it because it's a little quicker and a little shorter to write. So what we do here is we're mainly going to be using the coefficients and the constants in this problem. So we're going to basically ignore all the variables at the beginning, and then we'll throw them back in at the end. So to start a synthetic division problem, what you're going to do is make sure that your polynomial is in order from the highest exponent down to the smallest. That's very important. And then we're going to just look at the coefficients. So we're going to look at all the numbers here in our equation. And what we're going to do is we're going to take those four numbers and we're going to write them in a box. So I'm going to draw my box and I'm going to put them in order from the highest degree coefficient down. So I'm going to have 3, then -8, then +11, and then -14. And then what we're going to do is take the divisor, so this here, and we're going to set that equal to 0. So x minus 2 equals 0, and we're going to solve for x. So I'm going to add 2 over and get x is equal to +2. That number is going to go on the outside of my box. Okay, and now what we're going to do is use these numbers to do our division. So the very first step is to bring down the first number. So step 1, bring down your front number and put it underneath. And then from here on out, it's multiplication and addition. So what you're going to do is you're going to multiply 2 times 3, so we get 6. And then you're going to add these numbers vertically. So -8 plus 6 is -2. Then we're going to multiply again. 2 times -2 is -4. Then we add vertically. So 11 plus -4 is 7. And then we're going to multiply one last time. 7 times 2 is 14. Add those together and we get 0. So now we've done the division part of it, and now we just have to figure out what does that mean. Well, this last number here, that's going to be your remainder. So that's going to be important later. So this means our remainder was 0, which means it goes into it evenly. Excuse me. And then we have to figure out, well, what do we do with all these numbers now? Because our answer is an equation. So what I'm going to do is use these numbers as my coefficients, and I'm going to write my numbers or my letters right after them. Now remember, when we divide, that means division decreases the degree. That's very important. So if my original polynomial was a cubic function, it was to the degree of 3, then my new polynomial is going to be to the degree of 2, so it's going to be a quadratic. So I'm going to have here 3x squared, that's going to be my highest exponent, and then minus 2x, and then there's no more x's left because down 1 is the constant, so plus 7. So this would be my final answer. And so this is the same answer that I would get if I would have done long division. We just eliminate the variables until the very end. So if I take this whole polynomial divided by x minus 2, I get 3x squared minus 2x plus 7. And then we're done. So let's try another example. Oops, here we go. So we're going to go ahead, deal with the coefficients first, always making sure it's the highest degree down to the lowest. So I'm going to make my box. I'm going to have an 8. I'm going to have a -2. Now this is where you have to be very careful. We have a 5th degree for, there is no 3. So notice that there's no y to the 3rd here. You can't just skip over it. If you're missing an exponent, that means you have to put a 0 in its place. That's very, very important. Then I can have the -16, and then there is no y, so I'm going to put a 0 again, and then I'm going to put the constant at the end. So it's very important to make sure you start at the highest and then work your way down every single one and put zeros in the places where they're missing. Okay? And then I'm going to solve by setting that equal to 0 and solving. So I'm going to add 1 over and get 4y equals 1, and then divide by 4 and we get y is 1/4. So I'm going to put 1/4 out here, and now we can start our process of our synthetic division. So first bring down the 8. Remember, we multiply, so 1/4 times 8 is 2, and then we add. -2 plus 2 is 0. 1/4 times 0 is 0. Add 0 plus 0, we get 0. 1/4 times 0 is again a 0. And then add these, we get -16. 1/4 of -16 is -4. Add those, we get -4. And then 1/4 times -4 is -1. So when I add those, I get +3. So remember, this is my remainder. So this one did not go in evenly. So we're going to have a remainder at the end, just like we did in the last video. And then I'm going to rewrite my equation. So remember, we go down a degree. So if my degree was 5 here, the highest is going to be a 4. So I'm going to have 8y to the 4th. This means I have no y to the thirds. Okay, so no y to the thirds, no y's to the second. So my next thing is going to be a minus 16y, and then a constant of minus 4. And then my remainder, remember at the end, we write that as plus 3 over whatever we divided by. So 4y minus 1 was our original equation. So there would be my final answer. Notice I have no y to the third or y to the second because I had zeros in my division. And that's it. If you feel like you need some extra examples, please let me know. But hopefully the synthetic was pretty easy to follow. It's just a bunch of multiplication and addition. If you have any questions, ask in class. And that's it for today. Thanks for listening.